This is Transistor.fm.
All right, welcome back. Justin Jackson here, and this is the Product People Show. Today I'm talking with Jarrod Drysdale. He's the author of the first ebook I ever purchased called Bootstrapping Design, bootstrappingdesign.com. A few things before we get started. Productpeople.club. That's www.productpeople.club is going to launch very soon. I'm going to start inviting new members. This is the private community we've been running for over a year now. It's a community built specifically for solopreneurs, bootstrappers, people working on their own thing. And the results that people are getting have been really great. There's a lot of people that have shipped some incredible products. And this new iteration we have has been really helpful. We're doing daily stand-ups for solopreneurs, and we're sharing our progress. So if you'd like to check that out, productpeople.club is where to go. All right, enough yakking from me. Let's get into the interview with Jarrod. You're going to love it. All right, I'm here with Jarrod Drysdale. How you doing, Jarrod?
I'm good. How are you, Justin?
Doing well. Jarrod and I have become friends over the past few months, and I've wanted to have him on the show forever because, Jarrod, you wrote the first ebook I ever purchased.
Really? I didn't know that.
It's true.
I'm very honored.
Bootstrapping Design. If any of you have not seen Bootstrapping Design, it's bootstrappingdesign.com. And there was something about this. There's something that happens with people, I think, where they become ebook buyers. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, like, you know, they go from saying, I'm never going to buy one of those ebooks, like they're not my thing, or they're too expensive, or whatever.
Right.
And your book is what took me over that threshold.
Well, that's awesome. I made a convert out of you.
It's true. It's true. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how did this book come to be? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, so I actually wrote that book it's been almost 2.5 years, which is kind of hard to believe. But so a few years back, I read Getting Real by the 37 Signals guys, and I was working in a full-time job, and I kind of got the itch to go and make my own product. So I had some consulting that just kind of fell into my lap, and it seemed like a good time, so I quit my job, took the consulting work, and started building products. The first thing I built was an online grade book for teachers. It's called Knack, and it was like they pay $5 a month, and they can use this thing, and it has, they put their data in, and it has analytics and all this stuff. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have my own products business. So I worked on that on and off for a year, and it was just a miserable failure. I had like 5 people pay me for it. So I wrote a post-mortem and was all panicked about what do I do? And I met Amy Hoy through that. And I took her entrepreneurship class, learned a lot about business that way, and bootstrapping design came out of that learning. Came out of
that course.
Yeah.
There's definitely a trend. There's a lot of 30 by 500 alumni.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
So what do you think changed? What was the grade book called?
It was called Knack, knackforteachers.com. It's actually still online if anybody's curious. But
knackforteachers.com.
You do not have to show it to anybody.
Okay, I won't show it. I'm just going to take a look here.
I mean, I don't mind, but yeah. So I think I wrote a post-mortem about it, and it hit the front page of Hacker News, and I was saying all these things that I'd learned in that class about finding an audience that is a professional audience and that you can prove pays for things, people who make money, and having a product that's attached to the way people make money, stuff like that. So I learned a lot about that, and bootstrapping design was kind of, is for a totally different audience. People who are building businesses, who are willing to spend money to make money, things like that, rather than just teachers who, at least in the U.S., are not really always very well paid and don't have a lot of extra money to spend. So it's just a very different kind of audience. So I think back then, I didn't know a lot of people who were writing ebooks, and I was just like, okay, an ebook sounds a lot easier than building a subscription software service. So I'll just try this and see how it goes. And I was pretty happy with the results. It did way better than I could have hoped for. So I was very grateful for that.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Why did you choose teachers originally?
I'm married to a teacher. My wife is a teacher. My dad was a high school teacher for a long time. My sister-in-law was a high school teacher. So I felt like I had some inside knowledge about that group and what their struggles are, what their pain points were. And I think I did in some ways, but there were just some realities of just the economics and the reason people teachers purchase products that I didn't realize, because I think I was probably too close to it. So.
And why do you think that didn't come out while you were building it? Like your wife was there and your dad was there. Why do you think you didn't get that information until it was too late?
Well, I think there's probably several reasons. I think the people closest to you and your family want to be supportive, and it's really hard to get they mean well, but it's hard to get a real objective answer out of them. They're always going to say, it looks good, you should keep doing it, because they love you and they want to support you. So just relying on your family members' advice is maybe not the best idea. Even if they mean well and they're trying honestly to help you, they're maybe not the best people to listen to, because they're not going to give you a straight answer. And then also, I just think that I was just so excited about my idea. I had kind of these just rose-tinted goggles on, or whatever the phrase is, that I was just seeing things in a really positive light, and I was like, this is going to go great, and people are going to love this, and I was just really amped about it. And I probably just wasn't willing to see the signals that were there.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. And what was the response on Hacker News when you did the postmortem? What were people saying in that community there?
Oh, everything. It's like with Hacker News, there's 100 different opinions, and some people were saying I was an idiot to shut it down. Some people were saying you should look for an acquisition, you should open source it, you should do this, you should do that. I think there was very little actual business advice that made much sense in the thread. I think there were a couple tech industry celebrities that commented on it and said, you can follow all the gurus' advice and still fail, and so I don't know. I think there was a lot of input there, but I think what I learned after that, just from other, just one-on-one conversations, was more useful, and it was just about choosing the right kind of audience and building a product that you have data that people actually need that and they're willing to pay for it. Those were the biggest takeaways for me, I think.
So why did you choose? Now, first of all, who is the audience for bootstrapping design?
So the audience it's really specific. Programmers, developers who are building their own businesses.
Okay, and how did you choose that audience? Why did you choose that group?
It was just through research. So I just did a bunch of research on various audiences, and that was something I learned from Amy's class, and just kind of, you list out audiences and you go and see what they're doing online, where they hang out, and what are their pain points, and you try and get as narrow of an audience as possible so you can really hone in on their pain points. And so that was what I did. Originally, I was just researching developers, and but then I discovered there were several places where there were these startup communities, basically, where the developers were saying, well, how do you get a design? I can't afford to spend $3,000 on hiring a designer. How can you get something? These themes are giving me a hard time. Are there any good resources? And so that was a really strong indicator that a book might be a good idea for that group.
Yeah. And what about everyone's always saying that developers don't pay for things.
I don't know why people say that. I don't think that's true at all.
So, I think people say it because people say, well, developers are into open source, and they're they'll build something before they have to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But that hasn't been your experience.
No, not at all. I think with code, maybe it's a little bit different. How many developers have you heard, well, I'll just roll my own? whatever, roll my own service, my own shopping cart, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But design is kind of different than that. It's not just about, it's a skill. You have to kind of work at it. You have to practice, and it's not necessarily really intuitive just getting started. I think you not only have to put a lot of work into building skill, but you kind of, when you're starting out, you really need the advice of somebody who has more experience, who can kind of give you some shortcuts and guide you towards the right things to try. And early in my career, I had that, and I was very fortunate to have that. And that was what I tried to put into the book, and why I think it's a little bit different than, just going and reading blog posts about, graphic design, because they're really just tutorials, and they don't really teach you how to develop your skill, if that makes sense.
How to kind of develop your own design palette, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, how do you describe yourself, by the way?
I call myself a designer, but I kind of do everything. I don't know. People say there's no such thing as a generalist, and I think I kind of think of myself as one. I do front-end coding, I'm a writer, I'm a designer. So I've even done a little bit of back-end coding, like I've used Rails a little bit. So.
Okay, so you're mostly a front-end guy.
Yeah.
But and when you were consulting and doing work, were you like an HTML, CSS guy? Were you a Photoshop guy? What were you doing before that?
Well, it was a few years ago. It's actually been a few years since I've done any consulting work, and I'm looking to get back into it now. But a few years ago, it was mostly, people weren't really talking about designing in the browser as much then, so it was mostly Photoshop work was the kind of requests I would get. But then I did a lot of front-end, building it out too, doing WordPress themes, stuff like that.
And so did you have any challenges? Your audience isn't really a group you were a part of then, was it? Did you have any challenges reaching out to them?
Yeah, well, I'm not exactly a part, because I'm not really I was never a full-time developer at a job or anything like that, so it is a slightly different skill set. But since I'm teaching design, I have experience, I have experience as a designer, so I can teach design, so that played to my strengths, I think. But yeah, just reaching the audience, because I wasn't part of it, was interesting, and I had to do a lot of research, just, where do developers hang out online, how do I reach them, things like that. And even just that kind of research, it teaches you a lot about what kind of language to use. Like if you're writing a landing page, or even just the book, what kind of words does this audience use when they're talking about this topic? Research helps you so much for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So take us through the launch now. So you wrote the book, which is hard. Was that harder than you thought it would be?
Yeah, it was. It took me 4 months to write the book. Yeah.
And so you got done with the book. Did you have a mailing list or a waiting list from the time you started? When did that start?
I believe, so I put up a landing page, I think it was in November, and like early November, I think this was 2012 maybe, I don't remember the year, but and it was just basically just your standard landing page with kind of a sales pitch on it, and at the bottom it said, you want to know when this book is ready, put your email address in here. So I started up a mailing list, and then as I was writing, I sent out a couple of previews. So I sent out a free chapter, I sent a couple articles just kind of testing different topics to see what people responded to, asking for feedback. That worked pretty well, and I just kind of did that over 4 months as I wrote it. And then I think it was March when I actually launched it, put up a new landing page with a purchase link and everything.
Okay, and how did your list grow over time? Do you remember anything significant there, or was it pretty steady?
It was actually pretty steady. I was really fortunate when I put up the first landing page just to announce the project that it hit Hacker News, and I got a lot of support from some really nice people who helped spread the word. So I think that within the first week or so, I had about 1,000 newsletter subscribers.
Wow.
And over the next couple months, I think I got to about 2,500. So, and that was mostly just residual, just gradual off of the initial announcement.
Gotcha. And was there any feedback while you were, was there anything that you got back while you're sending these things out that made you adjust the book or change the product in some way?
Honestly, no. The feedback, I was really surprised by that, but it was all really positive. The one thing that I did learn while I was writing it, I pretty much cut the book in half. I had this huge outline when I put up the landing page and just, because I needed to have a rough plan of what I was going to do. I hadn't written it yet, but I ended up cutting about half of it out. And I was a little bit worried when I started sending samples and stuff that people would say, this looks kind of short. There's not very much in this. But the first chapter I sent was on typography, and people responded to that well. So that gave me the confidence to say, okay, I think I can launch this with less than I planned, and people will still be happy with it.
And
I sent out a table of contents, and people seemed fine with it. So.
Okay. And why did you decide to cut out half?
Because it would have taken me a year to finish writing it. If I had done every topic on my list, it was just too much. It would have been such a big book. So I had to launch it. So actually what I did was I launched it as a quote-unquote beta version because I was still a little bit nervous that people would say there wasn't enough in there. And I think it was about 140 pages in the PDF. And I launched it and just sent a request like, okay, what do you guys think? This is the beta. Tell me what you think, and I'll revise it. And I did a revised version a couple months later, but it was really just light edits was all it was, just grammar, and I think I wrote, maybe an extra couple pages or something, but I didn't need to change it that much, so I was lucky.
I think I was on the beta. I'm trying to remember actually how I heard about it, because I always think that discovery process is interesting.
Yeah.
But I can't remember exactly, but I think one thing that's important is that you were able to create some buzz, whether that was luck or purposeful. That I think one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is you kind of have to get hit with something a couple times. I was even thinking maybe it's up to 7 times. 7 times before you actually think, hey, you know what, maybe I should get that thing.
Yeah.
And if you only talk about it once or you only tweet about it once and you really don't want to push it too much, I actually see you apologizing for this all the time on Twitter. You'll be like, I apologize, I'm going to be doing some promo or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking, man, you just wasted a tweet. You should.
Well, I try to be nice. I want to balance like the sales pitches with providing stuff that's valuable. Or at least providing stuff that's valuable that somebody doesn't have to pay for. Yeah. So I don't want people to think that I'm a spammer and that I'm always, plugging my own stuff and not pitching
and
in,
I mean that's good. In my experience, I'm this way too. We're often way too like I don't want to share too much, but you were able to create some buzz for this. People heard about it, and I remember seeing it, and this is the purchasing process in my head. And you always have to go back, right? So there's things going on at work where I just can't get where we're slowing down. I was working for like a web app, right? Mm-hmm. Where we're slowing down is we always had to wait for the designer to build something, even for really basic pages. And I thought, you know what? Like, I need the developers to just know some basic skills. This was a .NET app, and at the time we were using web forms. So the developer kind of owns the process, and everything kind of has to start in .NET. And I was thinking, man, if I could just have the developers understand some basic design principles, they could do the first part, and then the designer could come in later and clean it up. Yeah. And that's why we bought it. I bought it for the office, and you know, that was like the threshold that I got pushed over to actually buy. Is there other stories like that? Do you know other people that bought it for work, or was it mostly people buying it for their own purpose?
No, you're totally right. Since I launched that book, I have learned that the audience is really diverse. Actually, it's not all programmers who are building businesses, but I've even had designers purchase the book, which shocked me because it's mostly about fundamentals. You know, it's like really basic design ideas rather than the advanced stuff. So I was kind of surprised that designers would be interested in it. But you know, it's been designers, marketers, just people who don't write code or design, just like product managers, you know, people who are project managers, developers as well, developers that are working at agencies or web shops, stuff like that. It's funny because the sales pitch for it on the landing page is really tailored really closely. You're a developer, you're building an online business, but all kinds of other people have bought it. So it's been interesting to talk to those people and hear about that. It's kind of funny how your marketing can work in ways you don't expect.
Yeah, and real-time update from the chat room here.
Yeah.
So Nathan says, I got on his list somehow after the 10th or 15th email I finally bought. I remember seeing it over and over again, but I was interested in enough to not feel like it was spam. So that's kind of interesting. He's saying it took him 10 to 15 emails before he bought.
Well, thanks, Nathan. That's really nice of you. Yeah, 10 to 15 times is a long time. I mean, I think part of that's, it's not just being reminded about that it exists, because obviously people forget, you need to remind them, but it's also just building trust. $39 for a book is, for some people that's not an impulse buy, and that purchase is more than just spending $39. For some people it represents like a big decision about some work they're going to invest in. So you've got to convince them that it's worthwhile and build some trust and say, well, okay, here's some previews of my writing. Here's why I can really help you out with doing this. So I think you've got to build some trust there as well as remind people. Yeah,
and I've been talking to people about this a lot lately, especially people that are following kind of like what's become kind of like the launch sequence, which is, you do this and you do this and you do this, and it's usually like an email sequence. The challenge I'm seeing that they're having is that they haven't built enough trust. Even like the fact that you had done something before and you'd written a postmortem, and all of those touch points all help create just an awareness of who you are, but also trust. Like this fellow has tried some things, he's built some things, he's written some things. Those all help, I think, more than people realize. It's why people can't just replicate the success of, everyone else, like a Nathan Barry, just by following the launch sequence, because, Nathan was doing a lot of other things to create awareness outside of the launch sequence.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I've had quite a few customers actually who told me that they found out about me from that first postmortem that I wrote, and then they discovered my ebook through that, by just checking back on my blog or whatever it was, or following me on Twitter or wherever it was that they found those updates. But yeah, I agree. I think that you have to put yourself out there and share what you're doing. And one thing that I've tried to do, and I've been more successful at this at other times, sometimes than others, but it's just being candid about how things are going, sharing failures, sharing successes, and just trying to share what I'm learning through all of it. And I think that wins you a lot of points. I think people come to respect you if you're willing to tell them more than just, how you can help them, but also, what hasn't worked for you and things that they should avoid doing.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about the launch. So how did the launch go? Was it like you launched, and what happened?
Yeah, so the ebook launch went great. It was kind of funny. There was a coincidence that same day, Sasha Grief launched his design ebook, and we had never even talked before. It just kind of happened that we both launched our books on the same day. So we both wrote some guest posts on A Smart Bear about pricing and stuff over the following week. But my launch went great. It was mostly just to my mailing list, and I think it made about $8,000 within the first 48 hours. And I was just thrilled with that. I was hoping to make, 50 sales, and it was great. It was very encouraging. And then over the following couple months, it reached about 30,000 in sales.
Wow. Well, so that's a different kind of launch, actually. This is encouraging. So $8,000 in your first 48 hours,
mm-hmm.
and then it just kept chugging along, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It kind of had a mind of its own. I sent a couple emails after that, just trying to, remind people that it was there, and just articles. But yeah, it kept going. I was really surprised. When you read about, people's successes, usually you see a huge spike right up front, and then it tapers off really slowly. But I had kind of a plateau for about 2 months, and then it trickled off. So,
wow. So it was kind of steady for 2 months.
Yeah. Relatively steady. I didn't have an $8,000 day, but it was, probably a few $100 a day for a couple months, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's encouraging because that could have been like $4,000 your first day, $4,000 your next day, and then kind of continuing on. I think that's encouraging because I think one of the problems right now is we've got all these folks that are having huge launches, and I mean a huge launch is great, but if some people, I had one guy call me and say, I had a $2,000 launch day. I said, well, that's amazing. Like you sold a $2,000 worth of product in a day, like. Keep going, man. Like you never know what's going to happen.
Right, and people, I mean, I've done the same thing. I relaunched that ebook actually recently, and I made about $2,500 in a day. And I was saying, oh man, it wasn't a huge spike of sales like I was hoping for, but you've got to remember that's still, you sold a product that you built, and you connected it with people who wanted it, and you made money. And I think it's easy to compare yourself to other people who have had huge launches like 30,000 in a day or something, and say, well, mine was a failure if I didn't make 30,000 in a day. But nobody starts at that place. You've got to build to that point, and just making money off of a product is a huge accomplishment, I think, because so many people try really hard to do that and fail at it. So just making a little bit of money is, I think, a great accomplishment.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about this more and share this more because the like I said, I think the folks that are doing really big launches are awesome, and that's amazing. But there's also people, like there's folks like me that on the side, with very little time, I've been able to make $40,000 I think in the past 12 months. Well, more than that now. It's probably 45 or 50 now, and that's just that's amazing. And I
think that's amazing. Yeah.
And I think we should celebrate even like if someone launched tomorrow and sold $500 or sold $100 or sold $1,000. Sometimes our expectations need to just come down a little bit to say this is still awesome that you built something and launched it, and people on the internet actually cared enough to pay for it.
Yeah, and I actually just wrote a post about this that I'm going to be sharing soon, but there are other ways to measure success than just money. After I relaunched that book, there was this guy who recorded a video thank you and posted it on YouTube and sent it to me, and it was just like 3 minutes of him saying how helpful this video I had made was. And I was just so shocked by that somebody cared enough about this thing that I had made to take the time to record a video and send it to me. And I mean, that's the kind of success that's worth celebrating. Regardless of how much money I made on that, somebody actually got value from it, and it really helped them out. And that's great. I think it's so easy to overlook that. But if you make $2,000 in sales, well, people are getting value out of that thing you made, and you should be proud of that.
Yeah, and I think one thing I like about Sasha Grafe is he's always reminding me that there's all these steps and checks you got to do, and he's just okay with saying, sometimes I'm not going to do those things. Like, I still haven't A/B tested a page, and sometimes I'm just okay with things not going perfectly according to plan. And like you've shown, you can have a $4,000 launch day, and then you could have that great guest post sequence that you had with a smart bear, and that might drive a bunch more people interested. And then you might have a bunch of customers that really appreciated what you did, and then they create a thank you blog post or a thank you video, and that drives more,
Right, yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I just think, and I think there's a temptation, like I'm pretty cynical, and you could almost call that self-deception, like you're just trying to say that it went better than it did, even though you didn't make money, it still helped people, and, you're lying to yourself. But I really do think that there's some meaning in that, and that it's good to just, be adding things and making products that actually make a difference for people's work. And I think it's good to remember that. And I think it's really easy to forget that, especially when your sales numbers don't quite reach your expectations and you're hoping, well, I worked on this a month and I wish I'd made more money. But just remember, those people who did buy it, they're getting value out of that, and that's pretty cool.
And the other thing I like about that is that you stay focused on other people, whereas sales numbers is all about you, and if you get focused on that, it's just a pit of despair.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And I think if you stay focused on people, eventually, especially for someone like you that's a real craftsman, like you produce really good work. Your book was, I still think your book is one of the best put together books I've seen.
Thank you for that.
I think when people see that kind of care and attention to detail, and the fact that you actually care about them, and you're not just out for dollar signs, I think people appreciate that, and eventually it comes around. I think eventually all of the stars align, and you'll get the big break.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope things work that way. It's hard to. I've had some trouble reproducing that success, to be honest. I think when was it? We were talking the other week, and I was saying, like, I'm trying to find this formula, figure out what the formula was that worked for me the first time, and I haven't been able to find it. And then I think it was you who said maybe there isn't a formula, and I was like,
Yeah.
So I think sometimes there's some luck involved, and you just got to keep plugging away, even when things don't go the way you expect them to or hope they do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Cascade.io. That was your next product.
Right.
Because that you've shared with me, that was a bit more of a struggle. Maybe talk about what Cascade is and kind of what's happened so far with it.
Yeah. So Cascade is it was kind of the follow-up product to the ebook, and it's essentially a front-end framework. I call it a design framework. It's built on top of Twitter Bootstrap. And essentially, it uses a CSS preprocessor to switch between things like color schemes and font pairings and logo styles, stuff like that. Comes with some kind of customizable layouts. So kind of like a design theme on steroids, where the layouts are kind of based on blocks, and you can swap sections in and out based on what you need. And then you could do a landing page, and then it comes with a design for like a web app that would match the landing page. So the thinking there is that you can take the knowledge that you got from the book about, how to pick colors that match your goals and what you're trying to communicate to your audience, and just pick them, and then rather than having to come up with it from scratch, you can just make those decisions, you get it all in code, and then you can just connect it to whatever you're building. So I launched that. I actually announced that over a year ago, and I launched it last November, and it has been I don't remember the exact number of sales it's made, but I think it's just slightly over $10,000 in sales. And it's, I put about 4 to 5 months into building it. It was a pretty substantial project, and it's the sales have been kind of slow for it. So it's kind of a puzzle I'm still trying to figure out. I'm not really sure what to do with it right now, to be honest. So that's where it is.
Yeah, and maybe just, I know, like, especially after the first success, I know that was hard on you, and I think that's just worth just talking about. That sometimes you get sometimes something works, and sometimes something doesn't work, and sometimes something doesn't work yet. And
right. Yeah.
That's all challenging.
It is, and I think it's really hard to know if something's not going to work or if it's just not working yet. So with Cascade, I think I've rewritten the landing page for it 6 times, maybe 7 times, completely rewritten and redesigned. And I relaunched it once. I did a couple launch sequences on my email newsletter, and I just haven't been able to figure out, is there a combination here that's going to make this work for people? But I do have a handful of customers, and the people who are actually using it are emailing me saying, one guy said, this is like my secret sauce. I'm building a web application, and I don't think I could have done it without this. And that was so cool to hear that from him. And he's doing such a great job with it. But I'm having a hard time selling it to more people. I've tried different ways of talking about it, different types of sales pitches, and emphasizing different aspects of the product, like different features and stuff. And it's been tough. Yeah, it's been really tough.
I think that's just challenging, and in some ways, I think I just wanted to bring it up so we could just acknowledge that sometimes it's just tough, and like, you and I have talked about it, and I don't really have any answers either. Right. Yeah. There's this idea of just being able to like you said, I'm going to keep trying things. And maybe try some other things too, aside from Cascade. But
right.
I know there's other people like maybe I shouldn't name names, but I know I've talked to other founders who were very successful, and then they tried something else and it didn't work, and
Sure.
and that's sometimes challenging.
Yeah, it is, and I think, like I was saying a second ago, it's hard to figure out if you need to just keep working on it. I think that's most of us were, programmers or designers, and that's kind of our instinct to keep working on it, keep improving it, add new features, write about it a different way, whatever, and that's kind of what we do because we're builders, we make things. And sometimes I think it's just okay to say, well, I'm going to walk away from this, take a break, and just, get some perspective. So that's what I'm doing right now because, I'm just out of ideas. So, and I think it's okay to do that sometimes and just say, well, this isn't working and I don't know what to do with it, and do something else for a little while. So that's what I'm doing. I have, since launching that, there are some things that I think, some mistakes that I've made along the way that I'm trying to remedy. So, for example, I think for a long time, once I started working on this project, all I really talked about on my newsletter was this project and what I'm building. And if you really think about that, that's not super interesting to my subscribers because it's not like they can go and use it right now. I'm just building it and I'm telling them they know what it's like to build a piece of software. That's not really that interesting. So for a long time, most of my writing was just about me. And it wasn't really about stuff that my subscribers could really use or get much value from. So over that process of building Cascade, I've lost quite a few subscribers on my mailing list because of that. And really, it wasn't like a huge, people were leaving in droves or anything. It was just, the standard, like every time you send a newsletter, 1% unsubscribes or whatever. And, you send a dozen newsletters and you've lost 600 people, So over time, I think you start to see the effects of that. And I'm trying to take steps to, start providing value to people again, rather than talking about myself and what I want to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, that's great advice. And that's for a lot of us that have started newsletters. That is a challenge of like, what do we write? And I think the thing that we always seem to come back to is, okay, well, we just got to go back to people, and how can we care for them?
Right.
And
yeah.
that might take some work. We might have to rediscover, like, where are they at now? Who's on this list now? I thought it was developers, but maybe it's a bunch of agency people, or
Right. Yeah. I think that's another thing that I faced is my audience, like we were talking about earlier, is a lot more diverse than I expected. I just, I built this product for programmers, and it turns out a lot of other people were reading that book, and here I am. I built a product just for programmers. You pretty much have to be very competent coder to use it. So that that could contribute to it too. But I think one of the other things that I did over that period when I was building and launching that was I think a lot of times we feel this pressure to do things the right way. Everybody says, keep your mailing list warm. If you're not writing all the time, then you're making a big mistake, and people are going to forget who you are, and they're going to unsubscribe, and you're going to waste all your success and all this stuff. And so you feel this pressure to be writing all the time. And I don't know about you, but sometimes for me it's really hard to write. I just have a hard time coming up with something. So sometimes I would find myself just putting out writing just because I felt like I had to, and it was just stuff that I threw together really quickly. And I think sometimes, I think I phrased it to you this way the other day, sometimes I'm just writing to fill the gaps between newsletters, or writing to fill the gaps between sales pitches, sorry.
Yeah.
And I just think, I'm trying to focus on getting back to value, making sure that when I write something that it's good and that there's a reason somebody would want to read it, rather than just sending things out because I feel like I have to,
Yeah. When I write something, I want to make sure it's good.
It sounds obvious, right? But I think it's something that you can fall into just as part of your efforts in marketing a product or, running a newsletter, that you just feel this pressure to be shipping things constantly. And it's maybe not totally conscious that you're just writing just because you feel like you have to write,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So where can people find you on the web right now? Where can they catch your writing? Where can they see, what you're doing with your next projects? Where should they go?
Yeah, so right now probably the best place to go is just bootstrappingdesign.com. It's just the site for my ebook, and there's a newsletter sign up on that site as well. in the next week or so, I'm going to be launching a new site for myself that I'm going to be giving away a free ebook. The next ebook I'm doing is free, and it's going to have a bunch of new stuff up there. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that.
Sweet. What's the new ebook on?
It's really just a collection of articles that I've written over the past couple of years. So it's called Design's Iron Fist. There's a title of one of those articles, and it's just like the writing that people have responded to the best over the past couple of years, and I've kind of gone through and edited and put it together into a nice custom PDF design. So
I love it. Design's Iron Fist.
Yeah.
All right, so you heard it here first. You're going to need to hear about it 6 more times.
Yeah.
But make sure you sign up for the list so you can get it. So bootstrappingdesign.com. And thanks again, Jarrod, for your time.
Thanks, Justin.
Hey, I'm back. Thanks for listening to the show. Really appreciate all your nice reviews on iTunes. If you haven't given one of those yet, go to iTunes, search for Product People, click 5 stars. It's just that easy. Also on Stitcher, you can leave a review as well. And tell your friends. We're Product People TV on Twitter. And again, head over to productpeople.club. Sign up for that waiting list, and I'll be inviting people in small batches, probably 5 people at a time. If you'd like to check me out on Twitter, I'm at MIJustin, and I write a newsletter every Saturday morning, justinjackson.ca/newsletter. It's all about marketing, building products, launching products. So if you're into that stuff, and you must be because you're here, subscribe to that, justinjackson.ca/newsletter. And that's it for this week. You, as always, have been a great audience. We'll see you again next Thursday.
Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.